Hey, it's Adam here, and you're watching The Culture Hack, where we're talking about how to create engaged workspaces that unlock the potential of your teams and drive your business forward in ways you've never seen. So stay tuned. Mike Grogan, welcome to The Culture Hack. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Adam. Very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. We've had this one on the books for a while. Mike is the president and CEO of IntegralOrg. And first and foremost, tell us about IntegralOrg, Mike.
Well, thank you. So we're a bit of a different organization. We are a charity and nonprofit, and there's many of those around, certainly. But our job is to help other charities and nonprofits do what they do better. And we do that in a number of different ways. We are a law firm for nonprofits. We're what's called an approved legal service provider. So we do charitable law. We do a lot of strategy and work from very small, get through a problem today to mergers, and then lots of work with boards to help boards be, functional and healthy and to do what they do better. So that's our role. We come alongside nonprofits for a little or a long time and make sure that they're able to do what they do well in community. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So when we were talking before, we talked a lot about how you might have two nonprofits that make sense for them to either combine together or change what they're doing or that kind of thing. How do you go about identifying these different organizations?
Well, usually they come to us, and sometimes they'll come to us with a problem or an issue or a question that maybe doesn't lend itself to the path that you had just sort of laid out for them. But as you sort of peel back a few layers and think through things and have conversations. I mean, one of the mantras of this organization is a quote that it's all change begins in conversation. So we have iterative conversations to say, okay, what, and then so what, and now what kind of stuff. And so sometimes people might think that, that they're fine the way they are and just need to tune some things up, and fair enough, that's the path you're on. But these days, and I think we're seeing it more and more, and certainly in the nonprofit world, is that the effects of COVID are probably lagged by a few years. And you usually see this in nonprofits where the private sector might, see an economic downturn right away, the sector will lag behind that. And when they come out, we lag again. And I think we're seeing those today, that some of the pressures, funding, and people, it's people right now, there's just not enough people to do some of the work we're doing out there. So you get into this sort of deeper dive into a question and say, okay, is there an option to bring yourself together, maybe full-scale integration like a merger, maybe a bit more of a collaboration, maybe where you're sort of figuring that over time and getting to know each other and bringing parts of your organization together in a non-binding way. So it all starts in conversations. It sort of digs down to what is the best way to do the work we do, and that's a lot of our work, and that takes time, and that takes some trust, and just sort of seeing where the road takes us.
I love that. And people that I've met that work for nonprofits tend to be very purpose-driven. They feel very passionate about the work that they're doing and then the help that they're providing to the community or families or whatever. How do you find when these organizations kind of come together? How are they engaging with each other? Are the purposes aligned, or do they have to kind of massage it a little bit? Like, what happens?
Well, there's a lot of massaging, I would say. And if we're starting a conversation about a potential integration, we don't start with finances or programs. We start with culture. We always start with, and that's the biggest piece for us, to say, try to not just explain your culture, but for people actually to take a step back and reflect on their culture. Because quite often, it's just assumed, it's there. And we think, well, we kind of do things well or not well, or this is our way of doing things. But when you have to sort of explain it and invite somebody else into this sort of co-creation part of creating a new culture, that is a different kind of place for us to be. So one of the groups that we just did a merger with, the CEO said, everybody should go through this process of a merger because you're opening everything up. You're sort of shining a mirror back on yourself. And whether you go down the path of sort of pulling the trigger or not probably doesn't matter. It's that honest and thoughtful and structured way of looking at yourself for whatever reason, whether you go it alone or work with somebody else. So that's where we start. We start with culture a lot and to say, okay, what would this look like? And, you may get those conversations that start really easy on the front end, but as you sort of move down the path and actually bring folks together, you do hit some rough spots and you hit some place where you think, okay, we didn't see this coming, or we sort of overlooked this, or it's just the natural progression of any type of partnership or collaboration or any type of joint venture, is that you bump up against things that maybe you didn't see. So part of our work as we move through these things is to sort of think, okay, where can we help with this stuff, and where can we solve things if they need to be solved? So it's an ongoing process and each one is so different. Sometimes there's landmines, and sometimes there's just little gifts along the way you never thought about. But you try to be open. You have to be open to all those. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think you have no choice but to lead with a little bit of vulnerability, right? If both sides aren't willing to, I think about it, it's like, here's my closet. I usually don't let people in here, right? But if we're going to combine forces or join as partners or whatever it looks like, then we need to know about this type of stuff, right?
Yeah, it depends on how you're entering into the conversation, right? If you're coming in with a transactional mindset to say, I'm just here to buy a program, and it's maybe you think about mergers or acquisitions in the for-profit world. That's not to say you don't have the cultural part as well, but to say it can be pretty hardcore. We're just doing this. I'm buying this asset from you, and that's it. You do get some parts like that, and that's stuff we can do. We can do the legal side of that. There's not a lot of room for conversation, but those who say we want to create something bigger than what we have now, and one of the pieces we work with is how do you put purpose before organization, and that invites itself to that very thing. I'm opening the closet, and I've got to not just tell you about the things I do. I got to tell you about how I do those things and why I do things, and who me and my staff and all those people be within that purpose-driven work. So that's where it gets far more complex, but far richer too. That's where I think that's where the payoff really comes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I imagine, if you flash forward to the future, the organizations that really do build that trust and share that vulnerability and be like, ask those questions, they're stronger because of it, and it increases your likelihood of greater success in achieving what you ultimately wanted to achieve to begin with.
Yeah, and it's not just an externally facing thing. It's not just I need to be vulnerable with you as my potential partner and tell you about things. I think if you adopt that mindset, you're better with your own staff. You're better with the people inside your own board. And to say we're honest with each other, and we're exploring, we're trying different things. I think that's the most challenging part for any organization. When you get locked into a certain way of being and nothing drives you out of that, then I think that's when things start to get stagnant or fall apart. And maybe you can still wander on and be successful, but you're probably not being your best. You're not sort of pushing yourself. And so, merger is kind of an extreme way of getting to that, but that process has all kinds of benefits, whether you go through the things or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed a trend, like when you're dealing with companies, are they, is the word culture or engagement or whatever, is it resonating with them the same or different than it was, say, pre-COVID, or have you noticed kind of any sort of change in how people are talking about or treating culture when you start having these conversations?
That's an interesting one. I think so much of nonprofit, where you started saying people work for nonprofits or have that purpose-driven side of things. I don't think that's exclusive to nonprofit, but it certainly is a characteristic that I think sometimes we hang our hats on. But I think sometimes it's that purpose-driven, I'm going to do things for others, whether that's in social services or arts or sports, whatever it might be. That can take away from the internal look and say, should we focus on our own culture? It's like I'm starting to see more of that as we come out of COVID, and I think there is this reassessment of what's important for organizations, for individuals, to say, maybe I'm not just here to do a job. Even if it is a purpose-driven job for others, I need to take care of myself. So I think we're seeing more of that. I think we're also seeing that it's certainly on the kind of generative side, saying this is a good thing to do, but it's also probably on the reactive side of the equation too, is that it's tough right now for people in nonprofits. When we talk about mergers, sometimes it's finances, but a lot of times you just cannot get enough people. So the idea that it's almost an imperative now to say, I need to take care of my own house. I need to take care of my own people so that I can take care of or serve others. So I think that it is shifting more and more, partly post-COVID with the stresses that created, and partly just the environment of nonprofits is continuing to sort of get tougher every year.
Interesting. So as the landscape gets tougher, it's tougher to find good talent. It's your people issues become harder. So now you have to really focus on that so that you can serve outside. Yeah, I love that notion.
Exactly. I think that's, and it's, I don't think that's rocket science in some ways, but I think sometimes you just get, like all of us, we get caught up in the day to day. I just got to get stuff done. And how do I take the time to step back and to listen and to care for and to play with my team? That's a big part of it as well. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Well, I love it. All change begins in conversation. That's there. I don't know how better to put that, right? Starts with a conversation.
Just go forth and have conversations and do them well and learn from it. And that's what we do. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Well, Mike, I really appreciate your time and your insights. It sounds like you're doing some amazing stuff. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Adam. Very much appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching The Culture Hack. Do you want to chat culture and engagement? Give us a call and come on the show.